Hi and welcome to Thete Gaming, where I'm going to go over my thoughts on the wider abilities from the new Soulblight Gravelords army now that the Battletome is out. The first Battletome to come out since the announcement that 3rd edition Age of Sigmar is definitely on its way, although of course the last few Battletomes would no doubt have been done in mind with it. So last week I took a look at many of the new War Scrolls. The new War Scrolls had come out for existing model lines as well as the model lines that were available for pre-order last week. And so they're available on the website. But now I've been able to sort of read everything. This is an army with a great deal more resilience than its predecessor even. And that was pretty good in Legions of Nagash. And it also now has a frightening level of potential board presence as well. Though I have to say, I did have to drive a long way to get the book. I've had to go out my way. I'd put in a lot of pre-orders last week because virtually quite a lot of the range has been improved with new models. And I put that in for delivery. And it had to be done across 2 orders because everything was selling out so fast. I said last week, very annoying I couldn't get the limited edition army book. It's going to make a mess of my bookshelf now. And then it turns out that Games Workshop decided only to deliver one of the orders or to dispatch it on time. So if it was delayed with the delivery, that might be down to, with the delivery service, Royal Mail, although they're pretty good right now. But they hadn't even dispatched it, but they dispatched another one. But the one they prioritised was the one that contained some models, not the one that contained a lot of models and the Battletome. Yeah, thanks. Nice one. But never mind, went out to, I don't have a local store, so I went out to a not at all local store, but I did get a Greg's Steak Bake out of it. And also the store birthday models, a free objective marker. Well, they called it a coin, but it's an objective marker, isn't it? As well as a poster. So shouldn't complain too much, did get some things out of it. But yeah, the allegiance abilities, stunning. The graveyards mechanic is still there. I sort of thought I was saying last week, well, the summonable keyword is still there. So something, that's for something. Works even better, really. So you can use them to summon units in reserve. That's fine. That's how it was. So like, as before, you want very careful placement of your graveyard sites where you can... I'll tell you what is a shame, where they haven't actually produced anything. Like, we sort of noticed that there weren't any endless spells with it. I know there's an awful lot of endless spells now, and I'm not a big fan, so I didn't really miss that as such. But then you think to yourself, well, they could have put some graveyard markers in there. Doesn't matter, you could easily make some up out of a bits box. But, careful placement, you think there. Particularly, I always think now in terms of, given that we know with 3rd edition, the double turn is remaining, doesn't matter what they try and do to dissuade you from taking it, it's remaining. So you always sort of think your opponent will seek to put you in first. The graveyards is something that could make them think twice because you could get yourself an awful lot of board presence off the bat. And of course, just because you go second in the battle round, it gives you an advantage in trying to go first in the second battle round. It doesn't guarantee it. And, just as with Legion of Nagash, you can deploy 2 defensively. You sort of would anyway. Just in case, but then 2 very aggressively to give your opponent a problem to solve, because they'll not want you having free reign with your graveyards because you can just pop units on top of them, in your first movement phase. Now, in a Legions of Nagash army, if a summonable unit was destroyed, you could spend a command point to bring it back. Sort of. There were conditions. One, it cost you a precious command point. How precious they are with the rumours for 3rd edition, we don't yet know if we're going to be getting more of them. But certainly in 2nd edition, very precious. And with some armies, there aren't actually all that many useful command abilities. That's never been the case for Legion of Nagash, and it's still not the case now. And it was worth it, of course, because you got you could have like a 30 strong block of Grimgas Reapers, for example, destroyed. Oh, I'll just bring them back. Or just your massive amount of skeletons or zombies or Graveguard or something. And, this was an army that always had good things to spend command points on, but this would have been worth it. But the second thing also, the unit had to be set up wholly within 12 inches of a graveyard site. and it still is. No model could be set up within 9 inches of an enemy unit. Again, that's normal for such things. But then you also had to have a suitable hero in range of the graveyard that you chose as well. So there were quite a few things you needed to set up in order to have it all work. Now, if a summonable unit is destroyed, you get a chance to bring back half the unit, not the full unit, but half the unit, which is fine. But it doesn't cost a command point, and you don't need a hero to be placed. It's the roll of a die. It's random. At the end of your battle shock phase, you get to roll a die. On a 5-up, you get to bring back a unit that's been, a summonable unit that's been destroyed, half strength. But you do get to add +1 to the roll for each enemy unit that you've destroyed in that turn. And given that you're only allowed to do it if you've destroyed at least one unit, well, that's a 4-up straight away. There are a few other ways to get units zapped in two. Belladama Volga, who's one of the new special characters that came out for pre-order this weekend, has a mortal wound causing spell that will make direwolves pop up for each enemy model that you kill with it. Radikar the Beast has a command ability that lets you summon 10 direwolves. I mean, you think about, the cost of a command point is 50 points. So let's say, you wanted to give yourself a command point, that costs 50 points. 10 direwolves costs 135 points. And you just get to summon it in. As long as it's within 12 inches of Radikar, and of course 9 inches from enemy units. Radikar the Beast costs 315 points. But you can think of that as like 85 point saving, because for one command point, which has a value of 50 points, you get 135 points of direwolves. So he's really 230 points if you think about it in that way, as long as you summon them before he's dead. And he's not an easy thing to kill either. And with the wolves you get with him. The Deathly Invocation as well. So this was the ability that let vampires heal up summonable units. You had like so many, and you could go, right, D3 wounds back, D3 wounds back, or D3 models back, or D3 wounds worth of models back, however it worked out. And that's in still. I thought it had gone because it had disappeared from the War Scrolls when I was checking them out last week, but they've just taken it off the War Scrolls and put it in the Allegiance abilities instead. So they won't be able to use it in a pure death army, but yeah, we've gone away from that, haven't we, the Grand Allegiances. The ability is both better and worse than before, however. It's better because any hero can do it, including a lowly skeleton hero. They can do it for 2 nearby units. Vampires get it to do it for more. But not necessarily all that great, and this is significant because you cannot use, the same unit cannot benefit from this ability more than once per turn. So you can't just have multiple heroes close by to a particular unit and bring back like 8 of them or something like that. So yeah, you can't have multiple heroes bolstering the same unit. You still get the old benefit with casting. So an unmodified 9 or more to cast, if it's not unbound, lets you carry out the effects of the spell twice. So just the common allegiance abilities are very strong. Some very strong abilities there, but also, I like this, ones that sort of mean you need to think about it in the context of your army choice and deployment. With the deployment of the graveyards having multiple uses, one in popping up units from reserve and another in the bringing back some models, half units that have been destroyed as well, means you have to be really careful about where you place them. Have one in reserve at least, in a place where your opponent's not likely to get to, so you do have it available, but a couple aggressively just to throw them off. And that's just the core abilities. Your army, of course, needs to belong to a dynasty, and I like this change to the previous norm here. So the dynasty, of course, is like your sub-faction. They have different names and different battle tomes, but they're sort of there in most armies now. Almost all armies. And presumably in the future, all future releases will give them, maybe Nighthaunt before too long. But unlike with most other sub-factions, you are not tied to a particular command trait or relic, because normally what it happens is, right, here's your sub-faction. So this is your special ability that everyone gets. Here's your special command ability. Okay, nice. And then your general has to have this trait. And then your first relic has to be this one. And it could be pants. But here you get a choice. This is way better. You know, too often, as I say, your choice of sub-faction meant you were taking it for the ability, and sometimes it was. Sometimes the trait or the relic or both were really good, but quite a lot of the time it's like a cost to you. It's the penalty for going with that sub-faction, because they do nothing. They obviously won't be worse than nothing, just wouldn't use them. But they can do nothing in practical terms, and you can't take something better. This is quite a good model going forwards, I think. And I hope it is the model going forward. It could just be peculiar to the Soulblight Gravelords. Now, on first inspection, I was immediately drawn to the Vyrkos dynasty. You know, re-rolling casting rolls for wizards, +1 to wound in melee from Death Rattle and Deadwalker models if they're near a hero. There's a command trait that lets you use a command ability for free once per turn. So that's like a free command point every turn. Again, you know, with 3rd edition, if we're going to end up with more command points or the way it works is differently, that may not be as good. But right now, that's pretty strong. It does have to be used by the general, but with special characters now counting as an additional general, it's like, oh, take Radikar the Beast, and he will count as a general in addition to your actual general. Because that was always the thing before with special characters. I can't tell you how bad I used to feel. Where is she? Taking Lady Alinda, not as the general. She's the Mortarch of the Nighthaunt. Of course she'd be a general if she's present. No, because then I don't get my command trait. So Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed, I think you'll find. But this idea, and this presumably again is something that's coming with 3rd edition, the idea that your special characters take them along, and if they're suitably, not all of them would class as a general, not all, but if they're suitably powerful, you know, GW will say, well, they're clearly of general rank, so they're going to count as a general even if you have a different general. So of course you would never have the special character as your general. You can take them, benefit from any command abilities they have that can only be used if they are the general, and still have a general who can take a command trait. So that's really good, and you know, gives plenty of scope. Now, obviously, this idea of you know, command abilities using if you're the general will only count for Vyrkos heroes, but that does include Radikar and Belladamma, who are really good. That being said, with my eagerness to make a Blood Knight themed army as well, I've been looking forward to that for some time. Kastellai would be the one that would... I'm not saying you would all definitely go for that, because some interest with Legion of Blood still, but Kastellai are clearly set up for Blood Knights. You know, I can have Blood Knights in reserve with them, and I don't have to pop them up from a graveyard. In fact, I won't. It'll be from a table edge. They gain permanent buffs when they destroy enemy units. The traits and relics also reflect pretty good choices for an aggressive martial army. I think what you have in this Battletome is a book that affords you a lot of choice for the scaffolding of your army. So there's a lot of choice in there. You take your dynasty, but you're not tied to a particular trait or relic. You've got a choice there. The range of units is huge. All right, it's not Sigmarin's huge, but what is? But there is a large selection of heroes, monsters, cavalry, infantry, a lot of different choices of battle line. You've got your particular battle line for different dynasties as well. You know, I will have a Soulblight Gravelords army ready for battle reports at some point this summer. I'm not anticipating, I mean, I think even potentially as early as July. And there are so many lists I'd like to try that I will have to stop myself using them for battle reports every other week. Just so much choice. And the spells, just as before, represent a good spread of damage options, buffing options, debuffing options. I really like buffing options because you're always in range and you know, they can be really useful, and debuffing ones. But some of the damage ones are quite interesting as well. There's certainly plenty there, though, to tailor to the needs of the army. Now, finally, I'll just finish off by talking. So last week, if you watched the video I did on that, I wasn't sure about Fellbats, because obviously I didn't know if they would be a good choice. They were great as a speed bump unit. That's clear. Fly, 14-inch movement. You go clear across the board. You can block the advance of something, pen something in. Your opponent's got to go through it. But direwolves sort of fulfill the same role. They're battle line as well. And also they represented better value for the wounds. They're not as fast, they can't fly. But 10-inch move, and You know, for the number of wounds you get, the points cost per wound is lower. You know, for something just to get in the way, I just thought, oh, direwolves. There might be a situation where the fell bats would be better, but often the direwolves are going to look better. But I didn't have access to the direwolves war scrolls because their new models have only just come out for pre-order. But I've got the Battletome now anyway, so I can now compare them. And what I would say is this. So, yeah, the fell bats have more movement and can fly. Direwolves are battle line and better value for the wounds your opponent has to chew through. If that's what you're going to use them for, to get your opponent to chew through them, direwolves. The ability of fell bats to retreat and charge is not as great as without a charge bonus. Ironically, direwolves. It's not terrible. You know, it can retreat, for example, from one combat and charge into a better one. And sometimes that comes up. Sometimes that's useful. And again, as a speed bump unit, that is useful. You've blocked a particular unit, you've survived, you're going to now pull out and you're going to charge into another one to ruin their day. But it's not always useful. It's nice to have it, but I'm not paying that much extra for it. However, if you were of a mind to take Vyrkos as well, and you take the Fellwing Flock Battalion, they get +1 to hit if they charge. That's all the Vyrkos and the Fellbats you have in the battalion. At that point, they appeal. The appeal certainly increases, but I think they do appeal. You could take a couple of units, 2 or 3 units of Fellbats, 2 or 3 units of Vyrkos, take that battalion. It's not a particularly expensive battalion either. And +1 to hit on the charge. All of those units are fast and can fly, and Fellbats can retreat and then charge back in again and get the bonus. So yeah, I think there'd be times when I think, yeah, I'm going to use them. I'd got them anyway. I was going to be having them available to me, but I wasn't sure how often, if ever, I would use them. And now I'm thinking, so the greater mobility and retreat and charge would have a benefit in that situation. You wouldn't have to blow all the points for your army just as well, because they're not none of them's battle line in there. But you'd have something that can cause a lot of disruption to your enemy lines and to where they want to advance. I can absolutely now see a place for some Fellbats and Vyrkos, with, as I say, what is a relatively inexpensive battalion, to mess up your opponent's board control plans whilst you've got your own in place. But the battalion that appeals most is Red Banqueters. I suppose they're Blood Knights there, but you know, you have a couple of Vampire Lords, and I do note again the Mortarks don't have the Vampire Lord keyword, nor even does Prince Vordrai, which has annoyed me in Legions of Nagash, and it still annoys me now. But that can be the Vampire Lord, the ones on foot, even the special ones on foot. It can also include Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. So you take 2 of those choices, a Palanquin or Coven Throne, and then 2 or more units of Blood Knights. 100 points for the battalion, and you can heal D3 wounds per unit in the battalion each of your hero phases for 100 points, and no limit to the number of Blood Knight units you can have, just a minimum of 2. Oh, yes, please. In fact, although there will inevitably be some units stronger than others, you know, I've not really looked at anything and thought, I wouldn't take that. So yeah, I think this is going to be a very popular army. I mean, the anticipation was huge. As I say, stuff sold out within minutes. I couldn't get my limited edition Battletome, for example. So we know it's going to be initially popular. I don't think it's going to be disappointing. Doesn't have everything, of course. You don't have loads of you don't have shooting options really. But what it does have, which is basically everything else, is crammed with choice and looks very good. But those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. Until next time, I'll see you later.